Why do we put strict, hard and fast physical speed limits on heavy machinery, but completely ignore the mental speed limits of the operators running them? Think about it. You would never ever let a crane operate beyond its structural load capacity. Literally never. Yet during a heat wave, we push the human brain way past its cognitive load capacity every single day. If that gives you a little cognitive dissonance, good, you're exactly where you need to be. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss these safety breakthroughs, because today in this explainer we're diving into the invisible speed limit that is probably causing near misses on your site right now.
Look, I want you to think about your crew for a second. Let's be honest, supervisor to supervisor. You rely heavily on your veterans, right? I'm talking about those middle-aged guys who've been on the job for 20 years. You just assume they're safe because, well, they've seen it all. But what if I told you that your absolute most experienced worker is actually your biggest hazard today? It's a really tough pill to swallow, but all those years of experience and sheer physical toughness, they cannot prevent a heat-induced cognitive fatal error. Their muscles might know the job inside and out, but their brain is operating in a red zone that they can't even feel.
And honestly, this exposes a massive, incredibly dangerous double standard in how we manage workplace safety. On one hand, physical hazards are meticulously managed. We're talking lockout, tagout, fall protection, machine guards, all strictly enforced, no questions asked. But on the other hand, the invisible cognitive capacity of the human actually operating that machinery is left entirely unregulated. We basically cross our fingers and just hope their brain is keeping up with their hands. And let me tell you, in extreme heat, hope is a terrible safety strategy.
So, let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world. We've all seen this exact timeline. Let's track a typical middle-aged manual worker's shift during a heat wave. At 8 a.m., things are great. It's a perfectly optimal 23 degrees Celsius wet bulb globe temperature, or WBGT. The worker is sharp, they're communicating, checking their blind spots. Fast forward to 12 p.m., we hit 26 degrees. Now the brain enters what we call a compensation phase. They might actually skip a minor safety check here or there, but their deep experience kind of covers the gap. But here is where the tragedy happens. By 2 p.m., at 31 degrees WBGT, we hit an invisible cognitive collapse. Their hands are still moving, sure, but the critical, high-level thinking required to spot a sudden hazard, it is completely gone.
And man, I know the struggle you're facing here. We are all trained, literally conditioned, to look for physical signs. Sweat, flushed faces, a guy looking dizzy. We are constantly looking for physical exhaustion, and because of that, we completely miss the invisible brain drain that is happening at the exact same time. The worker tells you, hey, I'm fine, boss, just a little hot. And the crazy thing is, they aren't lying to you. They literally lack the cognitive awareness in that specific moment to realize how compromised their own decision-making has become. This isn't a discipline issue, guys. It is a hard neurophysiological reality.
As a safety consultant, I always use one specific analogy to make sense of what's happening under that hard hat. Think of the human brain like a car engine. A car engine runs dangerously hot and redirects its energy long before it actually starts blowing smoke under the hood, right? Well, the human brain does the exact same thing. When environmental heat and metabolic heat combine, the brain enters what's called conservation mode. This is a physiological state where an overheating brain literally shuts down high-level processing, like complex risk assessment, just to preserve its basic survival functions, keeping your heart beating, keeping your lungs breathing. The brain is actively sacrificing safety to guarantee basic survival.
Now this is where the hard science backing this up becomes a total game changer. We're talking actual EEG data, brainwave recordings taken from middle-aged manual workers while they work. And it reveals exactly how the brain fails under heat stress. The delta band, which is linked to cognitive suppression and drowsiness, violently spikes as temperatures rise. It just shoots up. At the exact same time, alpha, theta, and beta bands, the frequencies that are entirely responsible for your working memory, active thinking, and problem solving, they absolutely plummet. The brain is literally pulling the plug on its own safety systems.
So, why do we miss this? It's because of a really deceptive physiological trick. Oh, and by the way, if you're finding this explainer valuable, make sure to hit subscribe for more deep dives into human error. But anyway, here's the trick. Basic sensory motor functions, like muscle memory and simple reaction times, they actually remain totally stable or sometimes even slightly improve in moderate heat. The guy can still swing a hammer or pull a lever perfectly. But the executive memory dimension, the high-level risk assessment, the ability to remember a complex lockout sequence, or the impulse control to stop a dangerous action, that totally crashes. They look totally fine on the outside, but the internal system required to say, wait, that's dangerous, is completely offline.
And this failure happens in one very specific location: the left frontal cortex. That's the brain's main risk assessment and executive control center, and it happens to be the absolute most susceptible to these thermal shifts. Heat directly reduces prefrontal brain function, meaning the worker's ability to suppress unsafe behaviors is physiologically weakened. They aren't choosing to be reckless. The actual biological hardware required to be careful is overheating and shutting itself down. If you want to protect your workers, this is the biology you have to start managing.
All of this neurobiology builds up to one highly specific environmental threshold. Seriously, grab a pen and write this number down. 28.5. That is 28.5 degrees Celsius wet bulb globe temperature. Through controlled studies on manual workers, this has been pinpointed as the exact tipping point where high cognitive load tasks become deeply compromised. Below this number, the brain can kind of compensate, but at or above 28.5, executive function just drops off a cliff. This right here is your invisible speed limit.
Which brings us to a hard truth we just need to face together. The current research makes it glaringly obvious. Relying solely on physiological threshold, waiting for a worker to look flushed or to stop sweating before we intervene, it is totally inadequate for addressing the massive safety risks of heat-induced cognitive impairment. By the time those physical signs are obvious to you, that cognitive safety net has been gone for hours. We absolutely must shift away from reacting to physical symptoms and move toward proactive environment-based safety thresholds.
Okay, so how do we actually fix this on the ground today? I'm going to equip you with an actionable, totally non-technical roadmap right now. This aligns perfectly with the latest OSHA guidelines, and it's built for supervisors to implement immediately. Step 1. Scheduled cooling and shading. You do not wait for them to ask, you schedule it. Make it mandatory. Step 2. Documented acclimatization. The new guys, or even your veterans coming back from a week-long vacation, they need gradual exposure protocols. Their brains just aren't adapted yet. And Step 3. Shift reorganization and buddy monitoring. Move all that heavy, brain-intensive work to the coolest part of the morning and pair your guys up so they can actively monitor each other for those subtle cognitive slips.
Now, to empower you directly, here is your specific action plan. Think of this as your heat-adaptive task management protocol. When your job site is below 28.5 degrees CWBGT, proceed with standard operations, business as usual. But the very second your meter hits that 28.5 mark, the whole protocol changes. Critical, high-demand tasks absolutely must be shared or rotated. If you've got complex machine control or precision fitting going on, relocate it to a climate-controlled area if you possibly can. And the guys rotating off those high cognitive tasks, they don't necessarily have to just sit still. You can shift them to simpler, repetitive, muscle memory operations where the brain can actually recover. Remember, you are managing their mental load now, not just their physical sweat.
So we have successfully mapped the mental speed limits for heat. You've got the threshold, and you've got the protocol to fix it. But looking at all this uncovers a massive, terrifying new question. What happens when this severe cognitive fatigue, this complete brain drain, collides with sudden extreme workplace trauma? Think about it. When the prefrontal cortex is already shut down from the heat and a massive crisis suddenly hits, how does the human operating system react? That collision, that is where true, unmitigated catastrophes are born. This has been a special explainer report from the Human Error News Network. Keep your eyes open out there and keep your site safe.